cry, but it wouldn't be completely out of the question. It's been a long 3.5 years.
Cornwall, the southwestern tip of England, is known for its endless rolling green hills and near-constant drizzle. It's a place of scenic beauty, but also one of Britain's most flood-prone regions. One of the most devastating events occurred in 2004 in the village of Boscastle, where a freak downpour dropped a month's worth of rain in just 2 hours. What followed was catastrophic. Over 5 billion gallons of water tore through the village in a single day, sweeping away 75 cars and 5 buildings into the sea. Roughly 100 homes and businesses were destroyed, and 150 people had to be airlifted to safety. Miraculously, no lives were lost. Faced with such disasters, most would assume the solution lies in expensive infrastructure: dams, levees, storm drains. But in Cornwall, a different solution has been making waves: beavers. Yes, the buck-toothed rodents known for building dams may actually be key to preventing floods, even though they're technically flood makers themselves. So how does that work? Most people are familiar with the North American beaver, once hunted nearly to extinction by European colonizers who prized their fur and castoreum. But the lesser-known Eurasian beaver met a similar fate. Indigenous to Europe, this beaver species was systematically hunted across the continent for the same reasons. In Portugal, they were completely wiped out by the mid-15th century. In the British Isles, the last recorded mention of beavers dates back to 1526. As demand for fur and castoreum grew and weapon technology advanced, the hunt accelerated. The Eurasian beaver population plummeted, and so did its genetic diversity. Isolated pockets of surviving beavers couldn't interbreed, which limited the population's ability to recover. By the early 20th century, only about 1,200 individuals remained across Europe, scattered in a few relict groups. Entire nations, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, had effectively lost their beavers. But by the end of the 20th century, things began to change. Conservationists and scientists realized the ecological role these animals once played. Restoration projects emerged across Europe, recognizing beavers as keystone species, organisms that dramatically shape their ecosystems. One such project in Britain would soon demonstrate how powerful that role could be. Enter the Cornwall Beaver Project. Its flagship experiment took place in the village of Laddock, a small settlement regularly overwhelmed by the Tresillian River. Even moderate rainfall could transform the calm waterway into a raging flood, inundating streets and damaging homes. The community had enough. The local government considered applying for infrastructure funding, but then came an idea that cost far less: reintroduce beavers. In June 2017, a male and female Eurasian beaver were released on a 5-acre plot of land at Woodland Valley Farm, located on a tributary of the Tresillian. Observers waited to see what would happen. The beavers didn't disappoint. Within 2 days, they began constructing their iconic dams using mud, sticks, and stones. What began as simple barriers soon evolved into a complex system of 7 ponds and interconnecting channels, all built without a single excavator or blueprint. Before the beavers arrived, rainwater would rapidly run off the land into the stream, feeding into the Tresillian and flooding Laddock within minutes. The new dams changed that dynamic completely. Each dam acted as a brake on the water's momentum. Rain that once surged into the village in just 15 minutes now took over an hour to arrive, and it came slowly, without the violent rush. A study by the University of Exeter revealed just how effective the beavers were. Their ponds stored approximately 409,000 gallons of surface water and significantly increased the floodplain's water absorption capacity. In the tributary, peak water flow was reduced by 30%. Laddock residents began seeing fewer floods, and when they did occur, the damage was far less severe. But the benefits didn't stop with flood prevention. Over the following 5 years, the landscape around the beaver site transformed. The dams caused water to spill into surrounding lowlands, soaking the soil and forming wetlands, permanent ones, not just seasonal puddles. These wetlands became nutrient-rich environments teeming with silt, organic debris, and moisture. In short, they created perfect conditions for a biodiversity explosion. Plants were the first to move in. Reeds, willows, and other wetland flora took root, their roots stabilizing the soil and creating a foundation for more life to flourish. Soon after, insects came. Dragonflies, beetles, and other invertebrates found sanctuary in the lush vegetation. Researchers recorded at least 17 species of dragonflies alone. With insects came the predators: frogs, salamanders, and small fish. The ponds offered a cool, protected habitat ideal for spawning. The water remained at a stable temperature thanks to the depth and shade provided by surrounding plants. As amphibians and fish established themselves, they attracted even more species. Birds arrived next. Ducks, geese, and waders found the wetlands ideal for feeding and nesting. The dense vegetation offered refuge from predators, making the area not just a feeding ground, but a new home. One notable arrival was the willow tit, Britain's most endangered bird, whose population has declined by 94% since the 1970s. Its presence signaled that the ecosystem was not just thriving, but also offering sanctuary to vulnerable species. Even mammals began to appear. Ferrets, once on the brink of extinction in the UK, started making a comeback. Their resurgence was partly thanks to the wetlands nurtured by beaver activity. All in all, what started as a simple reintroduction evolved into a full-scale ecosystem revival. While conservationists celebrated the boost in biodiversity, every day locals appreciated something more tangible: cleaner water. Much of the land around Laddock is farmland, and agricultural runoff is one of the UK's biggest water pollutants. Fertilizers rich in phosphates and nitrates, along with animal waste, often end up in rivers and lakes. These chemicals fuel algae blooms that block sunlight and deplete oxygen levels in the water, harming aquatic life. But the beavers inadvertently solved part of this problem too. Their dams slowed water movement, allowing suspended particles, including pollutants, to settle to the bottom of the ponds. Water that flowed out of the beaver-engineered wetlands was significantly cleaner. Without the need for chemicals or mechanical filters, the beavers provided a natural purification system. By 2022, Laddock had a stronger defense against floods, a richer ecosystem, and even better water quality, all for the cost of about $5,000. Compare that to the hundreds of thousands or even millions that might be spent on artificial infrastructure, and the value of this furry workforce becomes clear. On top of that, the Cornwall Beaver Project started offering eco-tours for $20 a pop, generating income and raising awareness at the same time. Rather than being hunted for fur, beavers were now valuable for what they built. And the project wasn't stopping at Laddock. The goal was to repopulate beavers across all of Cornwall, creating a network of wetlands that could act as natural flood buffers and biodiversity hotspots throughout the region. The dream? A beaver highway of interconnected streams and dams spanning the county. Still, the project wasn't reckless. Each release was carefully planned. The initial site near Laddock was studied thoroughly, and future releases would follow the same rigor. Beavers wouldn't be released where they weren't needed or where their presence could cause harm. Every new introduction would come with monitoring, tracking population health, food supply, flood risks, and ecosystem changes. Just as importantly, project leaders held community meetings, working with farmers and residents to explain the benefits of having beavers nearby. After all, no ecological plan succeeds without local support. The beavers of Cornwall were no longer outsiders. They became full-time residents, integral to a self-sustaining, human-friendly ecosystem. It's a remarkable turnaround for a species that was nearly extinct in the UK just a few decades ago. In the wild, beavers were rare until recent reintroduction projects took root. By 2022, Scotland had more than 1,500 beavers, and projections suggest that number could hit 10,000 by 2030. In England, estimates from 2024 place the population at around 400. Wales, while quieter on the matter, is also believed to have several managed enclosures. Not everyone is thrilled about the beaver comeback. Farmers, in particular, have raised concerns. The National Farmers Union, NFU, has voiced opposition, citing real risks. Beavers gnaw on trees, especially the bark, and that can damage commercial forestry operations. They can also flood farmland, affecting both crops and livestock. A single tree falling the wrong way, or a dam redirecting water unexpectedly, can mean thousands in damages. To address these concerns, the UK government introduced mandatory licensing in 2022. Now, any beaver release must go through Natural England, the official advisory body on environmental matters. Applicants must provide detailed environmental assessments and plans for mitigating conflict. If all checks out, they receive license A69, permission to reintroduce these industrious rodents. Of course, illegal releases still happen. But if caught, violators face up to 6 months in jail or an unlimited fine. Legal releases ensure that any potential downsides are managed upfront. Instead of reacting to problems, authorities and communities can prepare for them. Yes, beavers may still cause some issues. But when weighed against the benefits, flood mitigation, water purification, biodiversity, even tourism, it's clear that these animals have a powerful role to play in shaping the landscapes of the future. In the end, Cornwall's experiment has become a model for the rest of the UK. Beavers are no longer seen as pests, but as partners. All it took was a chance and 2 beavers to spark a quiet revolution in conservation. When we think of restoring degraded lands in the United States, we often imagine massive government programs, expensive technology, or years of painstaking manual labor. But surprisingly, one of the most powerful forces in land restoration has buck teeth and a flat tail. That's right, beavers. Before we dive into how these incredible creatures are transforming landscapes, let's start with the basics. One of the biggest reasons land becomes barren and unusable is soil degradation. Over time, overgrazing, deforestation, and poor farming practices wear down the soil until it can no longer support crops or even native vegetation. But not all hope is lost. Across the country, new strategies are being tested to heal the land and make it fertile once again. One of those strategies? Controlled grazing. It's a way of rotating livestock between pastures to prevent overuse and allow grasses and roots to recover. Another method gaining attention is letting nature's engineers, the beavers, do what they do best, build dams and shape ecosystems. At first glance, beavers might seem like ordinary woodland critters. They gnaw on trees, slap their tails, and build dams. Cute, but nothing special, right? Wrong. What they do has massive ripple effects. Their dam-building instincts help store water, create wetlands, support wildlife, and even reverse environmental damage caused by humans. Take Arizona, for example. A state better known for its cacti and scorching deserts than for lush wetlands. But not long ago, something remarkable happened in a part of Arizona that had been degraded for generations. And it all started with the quiet return of a few humble beavers. Let's rewind the clock. Centuries ago, before European settlers arrived, North America was beaver country. From the frigid coasts of Alaska to the marshes of the Gulf of Mexico, beavers thrived. They shaped the landscape, carving out rivers and wetlands with their dams, creating rich, biodiverse environments. But then came the fur trade. Beavers had the misfortune of having incredibly valuable pelts. Their fur was warm, waterproof, and perfect for making hats and coats. Their castoreum, an oily substance secreted near the tail, was also highly prized for perfumes and medicines. And so began a ruthless hunt. In the early 1600s, in New Netherland, a Dutch colony on the east coast, it's estimated that 80,000 beavers were killed every year for 9 straight years. In Connecticut and Massachusetts, over 10,000 beavers were trapped annually between 1620 and 1630. And by 1670, companies like the Hudson's Bay Company were shipping countless beaver pelts from Canada to England. The east coast was quickly emptied of beavers, and hunters pushed westward. From 1806 to 1838, just 3 decades, beaver populations across much of the US and Canada were nearly wiped out. The once abundant species teetered on the edge of extinction. One of the ecosystems that suffered most was the San Pedro River in southern Arizona. This river flows through the Sonoran Desert, a region known for its arid climate, extreme temperatures, and limited rainfall. But before the beaver hunt began, the San Pedro was something extraordinary. It was an oasis, a winding, life-giving stream surrounded by swamps, meadows, and vibrant forests. Beavers built sprawling ponds that supported fish, birds, and countless other species. In fact, early settlers were amazed by the sheer number of beavers. They dubbed the river Beaver River. But that didn't save the animals. Beavers were trapped en masse. And then came a fatal blow from an unlikely source. In the 1920s, the U.S. military got involved. Soldiers stationed at Fort Huachuca, located near the San Pedro, dynamited beaver dams to prevent stagnant water from becoming a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which they believed caused malaria. The destruction was devastating. The beavers disappeared, and so did the wetlands they had built. Over time, the San Pedro began to dry up. Without dams to hold water, the river lost its floodplains and wet meadows. Vegetation vanished. Birds stopped migrating there. Wildlife populations dropped. By the 1950s, the river only flowed during Arizona's brief rainy seasons. The once lush river corridor had become just another dry desert wash. And that's how things stayed for decades. Until the late 1990s, when science... What if the solution to restoring the San Pedro wasn't building artificial dams or launching million-dollar restoration projects, but simply bringing back the beavers? From 1999 to 2002, the idea was put to the test. A small group of beavers, just 19 individuals, was reintroduced to the river in Cochise County along a stretch of the San Pedro. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. By 2006, researchers counted over 30 dams built by the beavers. These weren't just piles of sticks, they were mini ecosystems. The dams slowed down the river's flow, which allowed water to spread out, seep into the ground, and refill underground aquifers. Ponds formed, wetlands returned, and with them came life. Birds began to reappear in numbers not seen for decades. Fish and insects flourished. The willow flycatcher, an endangered bird that had all but vanished from the region, returned to nest in the newly formed wetlands. Scientists monitoring 13 species of birds found a staggering 50% increase in population density in areas where beavers were active compared to areas without them. Beavers weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Some wandered away from the original release site. One intrepid adventurer was nicknamed the surfing beaver after drifting dozens of miles downriver to the Gila River. Others made their way to remote canyons or crossed the border into Mexico, where they started new colonies. In 2008, a massive flood hit the San Pedro. Unlike human-built dams, beaver dams are made of sticks and mud. They don't stand a chance against powerful floods. After the waters receded, researchers couldn't find a single dam. It looked like all the work had been washed away. But nature had a surprise in store. Just 1 year later, the beavers had rebuilt. By 2009, 30 new dams stood proudly in place. Bird populations, the resilient wetlands, and the green corridors snaking through the desert. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all? Sometimes the best way to fix what humans broke is to let nature do the work. Beavers, with nothing but instinct and wood, managed to transform a nearly lifeless desert stream into a flourishing habitat. In a time when climate change, water scarcity, and habitat destruction loom large, their story offers hope and a blueprint for how we might reclaim other damaged lands across America. All it takes is a few rodents and a whole lot of sticks.